on a man they say was wanted for murder in Ecuador and was in the U.S. illegally.
Are you aware of the crimes you've committed?
Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem along for the ride after deploying roughly 2,000 agents to St. Paul and Minneapolis for immigration raids.
3:47 a.m. Minneapolis, Minnesota. The thermometer reads -6 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind cuts like a razor across the frozen city. Streetlights flicker through ice fog so thick you can barely see 20 feet ahead. But under that fog, something massive is moving. 2,000 federal agents. FBI, DEA, ICE, Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Marshals, all converging on one city with one mission. The largest coordinated cartel takedown operation in American history. Governor Samuel Bradford didn't see it coming. Neither did the 5,000 National Guard troops he was about to deploy in response. What happened next would turn Minneapolis into a battlefield, not with bullets, but with something far more dangerous: constitutional collapse. Let me show you how a city became a cage, and how the hunters became the hunted. If you want the full truth about what's happening in Minnesota, hit like so this story reaches more people who need to know. The operation had a code name: Operation Frozen Empire. Federal planners had been mapping Minneapolis for 6 months. Every cartel safe house, every drug fortress, every money laundering front disguised as legitimate business. The target wasn't just street dealers. It was the infrastructure of the Reynosa Syndicate, a fictional Mexican drug cartel that had turned the Twin Cities into the largest fentanyl distribution hub north of Chicago. The numbers were staggering. Intelligence indicated 4.2 tons of fentanyl moving through Minneapolis every month. 8.7 million fentanyl pills pressed in underground labs. $340 million laundered through shell companies and ghost corporations. But here's what made this different. Here's what turned a drug operation into a national crisis. The cartel had infiltrated state government. At 4:32 a.m., the first breach happened. FBI SWAT teams hit a luxury condo tower in downtown Minneapolis. 23rd floor. Corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the frozen Mississippi River. Inside, they found Diego Morales, the Reynosa Syndicate's regional commander for the entire Midwest. But they also found something else. Encrypted laptops, satellite phones with direct lines to Mexico, and a steel briefcase containing $2.3 million in cash bundled with rubber bands. Next to it, a handwritten ledger. Names, dates, payment amounts. The first name on the list was Lieutenant Governor Patricia Chen. The second name was Minneapolis Police Chief Ronald Tasker. The third name was Minnesota State Senator Michael Hargrove. This wasn't a drug case anymore. This was a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of state power. Comment exposed if you want to see how deep this goes. Across the city, simultaneous raids erupted like synchronized explosions. Federal teams hit 18 locations within 40 minutes. A warehouse in the industrial district near the rail yards. Inside, agents found a fully operational drug superlab. Fentanyl powder imported from Mexico being pressed into pills using industrial machinery. 50-pound bags of cutting agents stacked to the ceiling. Chemical barrels labeled as cleaning supplies. The lab could produce 300,000 fentanyl pills per day. DEA agents seized 2.1 million pills ready for distribution. Street value, $21 million. But the real discovery was in the back office. A server farm. Digital records of every shipment. GPS coordinates of distribution points across 12 states. Encrypted communications with cartel leadership in Reynosa, Mexico. And payment records showing regular wire transfers to accounts linked to Lieutenant Governor Patricia Chen's husband's consulting firm. At a massage parlor front in South Minneapolis, ICE agents breached the doors to find a human trafficking operation. 17 women from Central America held in basement rooms, forced to work as drug couriers and worse. The women described a network, how they were smuggled across the southern border through cartel-controlled tunnels near McAllen, Texas. How they were transported north in semi-trucks hidden among legitimate cargo. How they were told their families would be killed if they tried to escape. The trafficking coordinator was arrested with a burner phone containing direct contact with someone listed as the architect. Phone records would later reveal the architect was Senator Michael Hargrove. At a high-end steakhouse in the Warehouse District, agents found the money laundering nerve center. The restaurant was legitimate, profitable even. But in the basement, they discovered a second set of books. Ghost invoices for food deliveries that never happened. Fake catering contracts worth millions. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands receiving payments for services never rendered. The restaurant alone had laundered $47 million in cartel drug proceeds over 18 months. The owner, when confronted, broke immediately. He gave up everything. The network of businesses. The corrupt officials who protected them. The politicians who received campaign donations from cartel-controlled PACs. He said the words federal agents had been waiting to hear. Governor Bradford knows. He's always known. Share this before the story gets buried. By 6 a.m., federal command centers were drowning in evidence. Analysts worked through mountains of seized hard drives, phones, and documents. What they found wasn't corruption. It was command-level collusion. The Reynosa syndicate hadn't just bribed officials. They'd built a parallel government. Inside an FBI cyber forensics lab in downtown Minneapolis, agents cracked the encryption on Diego Morales' laptop. What appeared on screen made veteran investigators physically sick. A digital flowchart labeled Operation Northern Fortress. It showed the entire cartel infrastructure in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and the Dakotas. But it wasn't organized by drug routes or distribution points. It was organized by politicians. Each state official had a code name. Lieutenant Governor Chun was the gatekeeper. Police Chief Tasker was the shield. Senator Hargrove was the architect. And Governor Samuel Bradford was listed as the crown. The documents showed how it worked. The Reynosa syndicate had spent 3 years systematically compromising Minnesota's power structure. Campaign contributions funneled through fake PACs. Blackmail operations targeting officials with gambling debts or personal scandals. Direct cash payments delivered in duffel bags to parking garages. In exchange, the cartel received something priceless: protection. Police patrols were redirected away from cartel safe houses. DEA investigations were leaked weeks in advance. State auditors ignored suspicious financial activity. Border cooperation with federal agencies was quietly undermined. Minnesota hadn't been infiltrated. Minnesota had been purchased. One analyst said it out loud: "This isn't negligence. This is engineered treason." But the worst was still coming. Type yes if you're ready to see how bad it really gets. At 7:15 a.m., a second wave of federal raids began, this time targeting the officials themselves. FBI agents arrived at Lieutenant Governor Patricia Chen's mansion in Edina. The gates were locked. Private security tried to turn them away. Federal marshals cut through the gates with hydraulic tools. Inside, Chun was packing. Suitcases open on the bed. Passport and cash on the nightstand. A plane ticket to Singapore leaving that afternoon. She was arrested in her kitchen, still wearing silk pajamas. In her home office, agents found $4.7 million in cash hidden inside false-bottom filing cabinets. Offshore account statements showing $23 million in assets. And encrypted phones with recent messages to cartel commanders. One message, sent just 3 hours earlier, read, "They're coming. Execute contingency." Senator Michael Hargrove was arrested at his lake house 2 hours north of Minneapolis. He'd been awake all night, burning documents in the fireplace. Agents seized his laptop before he could wipe it. Forensic recovery revealed everything. Lists of trafficked women, payments to corrupt border agents, emails coordinating cartel shipments with state legislative schedules. Hargrove had used his position on the Transportation Committee to approve shipping routes that cartel trucks used without inspection. Police Chief Ronald Tasker tried to run. He made it 12 miles outside the city before state troopers boxed him in on Highway 169. In his SUV, agents found 3 burner phones, $890,000 in cash, and a loaded Glock 9mm. Tasker had been feeding raid schedules to the cartel for 2 years. Every time federal agents planned an operation, the targets vanished hours before arrival. Now the feds knew why. But the most shocking arrest was yet to come. Comment justice if you believe they all deserve life in prison. At 9:30 a.m., FBI Director Kash Patel personally authorized the final warrant. Target: Governor Samuel Bradford. The legal authority came from the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. RICO charges: conspiracy to distribute narcotics, money laundering, obstruction of justice. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records showing $12 million in unexplained deposits to Bradford's blind trust. Phone records linking him to cartel commanders. Testimony from Diego Morales, who'd agreed to cooperate in exchange for witness protection. Morales gave them everything. He described meetings in the governor's mansion, cash deliveries to Bradford's chief of staff, agreements to keep National Guard units away from cartel operations near the Canadian border. He described how Bradford had turned Minnesota into what the cartel called the Fortress, a protected zone where the Reynosa syndicate could operate with near immunity. The plan was ambitious. Use Minnesota's progressive reputation and sanctuary policies as cover. Flood the region with fentanyl and methamphetamine. Launder proceeds through legitimate businesses. Build political power. Within 5 years, The cartel intended to control governors' offices in 3 states. Bradford was phase 1. But when federal agents arrived at the state capitol at 10 a.m., they found something unexpected. 5,000 Minnesota National Guard troops, fully armed, surrounding the building. Share this video so everyone knows what happened next. Governor Bradford had activated the guard at 9 a.m., 1 hour before federal agents arrived. The official justification: protection of state sovereignty against federal overreach. But everyone knew the truth. Bradford was using the military to shield himself from arrest. The guard commander was General Marcus Hendricks, a decorated combat veteran with 2 tours in Afghanistan. Hendricks received his orders directly from Bradford: do not allow federal agents to enter the Capitol under any circumstances. It was an illegal order. Obstruction of justice. Possibly treason. But Hendricks didn't refuse immediately. He asked for time to assess the situation. What Hendricks did next would change everything. At 10:15 a.m., Hendricks met with FBI Director Patel in a neutral location, a parking garage halfway between the Capitol and federal headquarters. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. Hendricks asked one question: is the evidence real? Patel showed him classified documents. Photos of cash in Bradford's mansion. Recorded phone calls. Morales's testimony. The digital flowchart labeling Bradford as the Crown. Hendricks reviewed everything in silence. Then he made his decision. At 10:30 a.m., Hendricks walked back to his command vehicle. He broadcast an order to every guard unit in Minneapolis. Stand down. Federal agents are authorized to proceed. Bradford watched from his office window as his military shield evaporated. At 10:47 a.m., FBI agents entered the Capitol. They found Governor Samuel Bradford in the ceremonial office, sitting behind his desk. He didn't resist. He simply asked, "Can I finish my coffee first?" The arrest was televised live. Bradford in handcuffs, led down the Capitol steps by federal marshals. Thousands watching in person. Millions watching online. Minnesota's governor, arrested for running a drug empire with a Mexican cartel. The fall was complete. If this moment gave you chills, hit like right now. But the operation wasn't finished. For the next 6 hours, federal teams executed warrants across the entire state. Dozens of arrests. State legislators, municipal officials, police sergeants, border patrol agents. The corruption had spread like cancer through every level of Minnesota government. In St. Paul, they arrested a county commissioner who'd approved zoning for a warehouse that turned out to be a cartel drug storage facility. In Duluth, they arrested a Port Authority official who'd allowed shipping containers full of fentanyl precursors to bypass inspection. In Moorhead, near the North Dakota border, they arrested 3 state troopers who'd been escorting cartel drug convoys across state lines. Each arrest revealed another layer, another payment, another compromised official. The Reynosa Syndicate had built a system so sophisticated that it could move tons of narcotics across the northern United States without triggering a single alarm. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd gotten greedy. When Diego Morales was arrested, he had a choice: life in prison or cooperation. He chose survival. His testimony unraveled the entire network in 48 hours. Comment cooperate if you'd make the same choice to save yourself. By 5 p.m., the scale of Operation Frozen Empire became clear. 47 arrests, including a sitting governor, lieutenant governor, 2 state senators, a police chief, and 16 other officials. $89 million in cash seized. 4.8 tons of fentanyl and methamphetamine. 2.1 million fentanyl pills. 73 firearms, including military-grade assault rifles. But the most devastating discovery was in the state's financial records. Forensic accountants traced cartel money through a web of shell companies, fake charities, and legitimate businesses. The total laundered over 3 years, $340 million. That money had funded political campaigns, lobbying efforts, public relations firms that shaped Minnesota's image as a progressive sanctuary state. The cartel had weaponized Minnesota's values against itself. One federal prosecutor said it plainly: they turned compassion into a business model for drug trafficking. The irony was crushing. Policies designed to protect vulnerable immigrants had been exploited to shield cartel operations. This wasn't about immigration. It was about organized crime using immigration as cover. Share this so people understand the difference. As federal agents secured the Capitol, a disturbing picture emerged from seized communications. The Reynosa Syndicate's Minnesota operation was phase 1 of a continental strategy. Internal cartel documents described the plan: Project Northern Expansion. Use Minnesota as a template. Identify vulnerable states with progressive leadership and strong sanctuary policies. Compromise officials through bribes, blackmail, or both. Establish protected distribution hubs. Target states included Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The cartel had already made contact with officials in Chicago and Detroit. Preliminary payments had been made. Relationships were being cultivated. Minnesota was supposed to prove the concept. If a governor could be bought, anyone could. The Reynosa Syndicate's ultimate goal: control drug distribution across the entire northern United States from a network of politically protected strongholds. They nearly succeeded. If federal intelligence hadn't intercepted communications between Morales and cartel leadership in Mexico, Bradford might have served out his full term. The operation would have expanded. More states compromised, more officials corrupted. Within a decade, organized crime could have controlled state governments across the Midwest. That's not corruption. That's conquest. Type conquered if you realize how close we came to losing entire states. By nightfall, Minneapolis transformed into a federal occupation zone. Not because of military force, because of betrayal. Citizens watched in shock as their elected leaders were paraded in handcuffs. The governor, the lieutenant governor, senators and police chiefs. The institutions they trusted had been hollowed out, converted into tools for drug cartels. Trust collapsed overnight. Protests erupted, but they weren't defending Bradford. They were demanding answers. How did this happen? How many officials were involved? What else had been compromised? Community leaders called for transparency, full disclosure of every seized document, public trials, no sealed evidence. They wanted to see exactly how their state had been sold. Federal prosecutors promised cooperation. Every document would be made public once classified information was redacted. Every trial would be open. But the damage was done. A generation of Minnesotans would grow up knowing their governor had been a cartel puppet. The psychological scar would last decades. At 8 p.m., acting Governor Rebecca Foster, who'd been next in the succession line, addressed the state. Her voice shook with anger and grief. Today we learned that our trust was betrayed at the highest levels. The people we elected to protect us chose to protect criminals instead. But let me be clear, this ends now. Minnesota will rebuild. We will restore integrity to our institutions. And we will never, ever allow this to happen again. The speech was powerful, but many wondered if it was true. How do you rebuild trust once it's been shattered this completely? Hit like if you believe Minnesota can recover from this. Behind the scenes, the legal machinery ground forward. Federal prosecutors filed charges under RICO statutes. Conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering, obstruction of justice, corruption of public officials. The evidence was overwhelming. Recorded conversations, financial records, testimony from cooperating witnesses. Bradford's defense team tried to argue entrapment. They claimed federal agents had manufactured evidence. They demanded dismissal. The judge denied every motion. Trial was set for September 2026. But prosecutors offered Bradford a deal: plead guilty, cooperate fully, and receive 40 years instead of life without parole. Bradford refused. He maintained his innocence, claimed he'd been framed, insisted he knew nothing about cartel operations. But Morales' testimony was devastating. He described meetings in Bradford's private residence. He played recorded phone calls. He showed wire transfer receipts with Bradford's digital signature. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Bradford was sentenced to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. Lieutenant Governor Chun received 35 years. Senator Hargrove received 40 years. Police Chief Tasker received 28 years. In total, 37 officials were convicted. Combined sentences, over 800 years. The Reynosa Syndicate's Minnesota network was obliterated. Comment guilty if you believe they got what they deserved. But the human cost was incalculable. During the 3 years the cartel operated with protection, fentanyl flooded Minnesota's streets. Overdose deaths tripled. Entire neighborhoods were devastated. Public health officials estimated 4,200 overdose deaths were directly linked to Reynosa Syndicate fentanyl distributed during Bradford's governorship. 4,200 lives. Sons and daughters. Parents and friends. Each one a preventable death if state officials had done their jobs instead of taking cartel money. Families filed wrongful death lawsuits against the state, arguing that official corruption enabled the deaths of their loved ones. Legal battles would continue for years. But no amount of money could bring back the dead. One mother, who lost her 19-year-old son to a fentanyl overdose, spoke at Bradford's sentencing hearing. "My son died because you chose money over life. You're not a governor. You're a murderer." Her words echoed through the courtroom. Bradford stared at the floor. He never looked up. Share this so the victims are never forgotten. 6 months later, the full scope of Operation Frozen Empire became public. Congressional hearings examined how a Mexican cartel infiltrated a U.S. state government. Testimony revealed systemic failures in federal oversight, campaign finance enforcement, and interagency coordination. The DEA admitted they'd had intelligence about cartel presence in Minnesota for 2 years but lacked resources to investigate fully. The FBI acknowledged they'd identified suspicious financial activity around Bradford's campaign but didn't prioritize the case. ICE confirmed they'd warned about human trafficking routes through the Twin Cities but received no state-level cooperation. Every agency had pieces of the puzzle. None had put them together until it was almost too late. The hearings led to reforms. Mandatory financial audits for governors and lieutenant governors. Federal state task forces for organized crime. Stricter campaign finance disclosure. But critics argued it wasn't enough. The system that allowed Bradford to be compromised was still fundamentally intact. One senator said what many were thinking: if it happened in Minnesota, it can happen anywhere. That's the terrifying truth. Type anywhere if you believe your state could be next. The Reynosa syndicate didn't disappear. They restructured. New leadership, new strategies, new targets. Federal intelligence indicated they'd shifted focus to Michigan and Illinois, learning from their Minnesota mistakes. This time, they'd be more careful. Smaller bribes, better encryption, deeper cover. The war wasn't over. It had just entered a new phase. And the weapon of choice wasn't bullets. It was corruption. Because you can't fight corruption with raids and arrests alone. You fight it with transparency, accountability, citizens who refuse to look away. Minnesota learned that lesson the hardest way possible. Their governor was a drug lord's puppet. Their police chief was on cartel payroll. Their senators sold out for cash. But ordinary Minnesotans didn't give up. They demanded justice. They fought for accountability. They rebuilt. That's the real story. Not the betrayal. The resistance. Not the corruption. The recovery. Power doesn't always need violence. Sometimes it only needs silence and ambition. But resistance doesn't need weapons. It only needs people who refuse to stay silent. If you're still watching, hit like so more people see this story. Comment resist if you believe we can stop this from spreading. And remember, this is a fictional dramatization. But the threat is real. Drug cartels are trying to infiltrate American institutions. They're using money, blackmail, and political corruption. The question isn't if they'll try again. It's whether we'll be ready when they do. Subscribe so you're prepared for what comes next. Because the siege of Minneapolis is over. But the war for America's soul has just begun.